Okay, so today we're presenting our process improvement project for the Jersey Mike's sandwich shop, specifically focused on reducing food waste while also improving inventory forecasting at the Lubbock location on 19th Street. So as a quick overview, this project looks at how the store currently prepares and manages its inventory, identifies inefficiencies within that process, and proposes a more structured, data-driven solution. So our main objective is to reduce the unnecessary costs caused by waste while also improving the product availability so customers can consistently get what they want. In doing this, we're ultimately aiming to improve both operational efficiency and overall store performance. Next. Okay, so the core problem that we identified within this project is that the store experiences excessive food waste due to inaccurate demand forecasting. So right now, the amount of food being prepped is not always aligned with actual customer demand. This leads to two main issues. First, overproduction, where ingredients can sit too long and end up being thrown away. And second, underproduction, where the store runs out of key items during busy periods. So both of these outcomes can become increasingly costly. So waste directly increases expenses, while stockouts hurt the customer experience and can lead to lost sales. So overall, the issue really isn't just about waste; it's the inconsistency in how demand is being predicted and managed at the same time. Next. So when we analyze the process just a little bit further, we are able to find several root causes contributing to this problem. So first, forecasting is largely based on employee experience and intuition. So while experience is valuable, it can lead to lots of inconsistency, especially across different shifts or employees. Second, there's a lack of real-time inventory tracking, and without clear visibility into what's currently available, it's a lot harder to make accurate prep decisions. Third, communication between shifts is limited, so one shift may over prepare or under prepare without the next shift fully understanding what was done previously. Also, there are no real standardized prep guidelines, so that means employees may prepare different quantities under similar conditions, which adds a lot more variability into the system. So we were able to see also that 64% of all the customer complaints that come from this store were caused by the forecasting errors, and this can be related to not having enough product on hand when the customer orders their product. Next. So the current state, so the root causes create lots of several negative impacts on the store's performance. So there's a big increase in the cost of goods sold because ingredients that are wasted still represent a real cost and loss to the business. Also, this can lead to lots of lower profit margins. So even small, minimal amounts of daily waste can slowly add up and build over a significant period of time. And food spoilage also becomes a recurring issue, especially with ingredients with less shelf life that are more easily perishable. And finally, customer satisfaction suffers because when the store runs out of certain items, customers become frustrated or choose to go elsewhere, which impacts both sales and brand loyalty. And so the current system doesn't just create inefficiencies, it affects both the financial performance of the store and real world customer experiences. And next.
So for finding the signal for the 91% rule, this is our slide where our analysis really kind of starts to pay off because this is where we found the key insight that made everything else kind of possible. So we ran a linear regression analysis that looked at the relationship between the weekly ticket count, meaning the number of customer transactions, and the actual bread usage. And so what we found, it changed how we think about the inventory at the exact location. So the regression equation we landed on was y equals 0.529x minus 55.03 with an r squared value of 0.91. And just to put that into simpler terms, because the math is actually telling us something pretty powerful, the R squared just means that 91% of all changes in the bread usage are explained by one single variable, which was the ticket count. And that's not really a coincidence. That's just the relationship. The bread usage isn't random. It's directly and predictably tied to how many customers walk through that door each day. And the 0.529 coefficient just means that for every additional customer transaction, the store predictably uses approximately 0.53 units of bread. So instead of a manager actually sitting down and guessing how much bread to order based on the experience or intuition, we can now just look at the POS system and then pull the projected ticket count for the week and plug it into the formula and get a number that is actually 91% accurate before we even place the order. So that's the shift that we want from the math, and bread was just like the starting point. So the same methodology, it can be applied to core meats and other high usage ingredients to build out, I guess, a more complete forecasting model for the store. Next. And then for designing the perfect balance, now that we have the regression model, the next question was really just how do we deploy it? And this is where we had to carefully think about the par levels, basically the minimum stock threshold the store needs to maintain at any given time. So we just designed a 2x2 matrix to map out all the possible combinations of forecast method and par level strategy, so we could clearly show which approach produces the best outcome. So starting at the bottom left, that's the current state, manual forecasting with the current par levels, and the result is it's exactly what we've already been seeing. So the high stock out rates, they continue, and there's not really any real improvement. And then when we move to the bottom right, you get to the regression model with the current par levels. It's better because demand alignment improves, but the store, it's still vulnerable to sudden traffic spikes because there's no buffer built in it. And in the top left, you have the current manual method, but with inflated par levels. So stockouts go down because you're just over ordering, but now you're generating excessive expiration waste, which just trades one problem for another. And then to the top right, that's the optimized state. That's where you combine our regression based forecasting with a 10% safety stock buffer, and then you just add it on top of the predicted par level. So this approach gives you at least stockouts because the forecast is accurate, and it keeps waste strictly controlled because you're not just blindly over ordering, and you're adding a calculated data back buffer. You're not just padding the numbers out of, I guess, fear. So that 10% figure isn't arbitrary either. It was chosen specifically because it isn't large enough to absorb any reasonable demand variation without being that large, so it can create a consistent waste. And then for this slide, we have a model that works, but a model sitting in a spreadsheet doesn't really help anyone if it's not built into how the store actually operates on a day-to-day basis. So that's where the improve phase kind of comes in. We designed a 3-step operational system to take this from theory to practice. So step 1 is standardized daily counts, and the goal here is just eliminating the defects in the data instead of trying to count every single item in the store every day, which takes time and it creates opportunity for a lot of error. We created a focused checklist that targets only the vital few high-risk ingredients, so bread, the core meats, and the cheeses. So these are items that, like, if they do run out, immediately just shut down the service. By standardizing the count process and just narrowing the focus, we get 100% count accuracy on the items that do matter the most, and we eliminate the over-processing that comes from counting things that don't really need daily attention. And then our second step is the dynamic par levels, which is the core of the system. This is the pool-based ordering, meaning the order quantity. It's determined by actual demand data, not a fixed number someone just decided on months ago. So the process uses a pre-built template powered by the regression formula, and it's fed by the POS export data, and it's assigned to a single owner to run each week. And this keeps the workflow very clean, it keeps it repeatable, and it keeps it very consistent. And then this last step, it's built-in limits, which is what we call the Poka-Yoke mistake proofing. And we hard-coded minimum and maximum order bounds directly into the forecasting tool. So even if someone makes a data entry error or misreads the POS export, the system physically prevents an order from going out that's dangerously under or wildly over what the store actually needs. So you're removing the human error variable from the most, I'd say, biggest part of the process. And then this slide, we're not just gonna say this works and call it a day. We have to prove it. So we designed a 3-month pilot program at the location, and it just focuses specifically on the high impact items like the bread, the core meats, and the toppings. We set 3 very specific measurable targets for what the success looks like. The first target is a 50% reduction in stockout frequency. Right now, operational shortages are happening regularly, and they create real service disruptions. So if you cut that in half over the course of the pilot, it would be significant. And the measurable improvement that proves that forecasting model is actually working. And then the second target is just keeping the forecast variance within plus or minus 10% of actual ingredient usage. And this is tracked using a comparison between what the model predicted and what the store actually used each week. So staying in within 10% band consistently means that the model is reliable. It's not just getting lucky on good weeks, it's performing accurately across a range on different demand levels. And the third target is a 20 to 30% reduction in spoiled inventory. And it's achieved through strict FIFO compliance, first in, first out. And it's combined with the optimized par levels we designed. So this one directly just ties inventory discipline to waste reduction. And it's measurable through the tracking, what actually gets thrown away at the end of each week.
So on this slide, we're kind of focusing on the core solution, which is going to be precision inventory optimization. The goal here is to move away from the broad one-size-fits-all inventory practices and instead use data-driven decision-making. What this means in practice is aligning inventory levels more closely with actual demand patterns. Instead of overstocking just in case, we use forecasting, historical trends, and variability analysis to determine the optimal amount of inventory to hold. This kind of approach helps us reduce excess stock, minimize stockouts, and ultimately improve overall efficiency across the supply chain. On this slide, it's kind of just explaining how it works. First, we're going to go ahead and collect and analyze historical data or historical demand data to identify patterns and variability. Next, we're going to apply forecasting models to predict the future demand more accurately. This kind of allows us to set more precise reorder points and safety stock levels. And finally, we're going to continuously monitor performance and adjust based on real-time data. This creates a feedback loop, ensuring the system improves over time rather than staying static. The key takeaway is that this is not a one-time fix. It's an ongoing adaptive process. On this slide, it's kind of talking about the impact of this approach. First, we're going to reduce carrying costs by lowering excess inventory. That means less money tied up in stock that isn't moving. Second, we improve service levels by reducing stockouts, which leads to better customer satisfaction. And third, we increase operational efficiency by making inventory decisions more predictable and less reactive. And overall, this is going to create a more balanced system. To wrap things up, precision inventory optimization provides a smarter, more strategic way to manage our inventory. Moving forward, the next steps would be to implement the forecasting tools, training the teams on new processes, and setting up performance monitoring systems.